Okay, so we're going to be making the symmetrical design. More specifically, this design will help prepare you for your Texas State Floral Association exam, although it can be replicated with really any other flowers and materials. So first thing you're gonna do is get your foam ready. For this arrangement, we are going to be designing with it long ways. So you should be reading the words Oasis Floral Foam in the correct way, looking at you. And first thing we need to do is use our anchor tape to anchor down our foam. And basically I call these the seat belts, but they're you're gonna put basically one above Oasis and one under, like a lap belt in the middle seat of a car. You wanna make sure that these are just long enough to hold onto the bowl, but not too long to where they're going all the way down the side of the bowl. They will take off points for that. You wanna push to where there's just a small indentation in your foam. Make sure your bowl and your fingers are both dry when handling anchor tape, or else it won't stick. Okay, so you can kind of see what I've done there. This would be like your view, not too long on the sides, just long enough to hang on. And make sure you push it down real well so it doesn't pop up. Next thing we need to do is take a floral knife, and you're going to trim off the corners. It is not a square design, so we want to trim those off. Not too much, just enough to where it is no longer square. You also need some wire, so when they set you up at the testing site, you will get 9 carnations, 10 pieces of leather leaf, a rose, and some wire. The wire is mainly there in case you break anything. They're not going to replace it. So it's your job to replace it. They don't take off points for that, so that's good. And then obviously you're going to need a wire for your boutonniere. With that being said, they'll give you 2 pieces of wire, just in case something breaks. But they're also great measuring tools because your symmetrical design needs to be 18 inches tall and 18 inches wide. This piece of wire is 18 inches tall, wide, however you want to look at it. From here to here is 18 inches. So this is a great measuring tool to make sure you get your height and width correctly. The skeleton is the most important part of this design because if your skeleton's off, then your entire design is going to be off because the skeleton sets the skeleton, and then from there you're following the lines you've already established. Tons of geometry in here, tons of triangles, a ton of angles that we'll be looking at. So the first thing that you want to do is find your straightest carnation, and that just makes it easiest for number 1. So I found my straightest carnation, and this is going to create the height of our arrangement. As you can see, it is taller than 18 inches. So what you're gonna wanna do is put your wire at the top of your flower head, and then cut to where it is now the same height as the wire. So this will give you a good starting point. We do not insert our stems all the way into the bottom of the foam bowl. So that means you're probably still gonna have to take some off because you only need like an inch or so, around an inch, to insert into the foam. So obviously more than that. I have a lot of kids that ask me, is it 18 inches from the foam or 18 inches from the table? It's 18 inches from the table. Your bowl is about 2 inches high, so really your carnation from the top of your foam to the top of your wire is really about 16 inches. And so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take and trim up my carnation a little bit more. It took off about, not quite an inch, but close to it. And that should be about the right length. Friendly reminder with carnations, don't insert your nodes into the foam. It creates a gaping hole in the wobble and it'll fall out of place. The second part is going to be, you are designing this way. I'm gonna move it this way for a minute. You do not want to insert this straight up and down. This is going to create zero depth in your arrangement. And so for this first carnation, you are going to want to give it a slight tilt back. Not 90, not 45, just a slight tilt back. I always tell my girls, think of like ballet arms, right? So if I stand and I'm like this, it's almost like I can shimmy through two sides of walls. However, if I take and maneuver my body, I create some depth and now I can't squeeze through. So keep that in mind when you insert carnations 1, 2, and 3. So I know I don't want to be able to shimmy through a wall because our arrangements shouldn't be flat or two-dimensional. They are 3. So I'm going to take, I use my pinky and just go ever so slight backwards. And make sure you insert it to where it's secure in the foam. You're going to take your piece of wire and make sure that the top of your flower head is sitting right at the top of your wire. So you can see here, it's my thing, here's my wire, here's my flower head, just the right amount. Also, you do not want to put your carnation too close to the back of the foam because we need to put some letter leaf there. So I put mine just barely behind it, kind of between the tape and the back of the foam. Okay, so let's help finish the depth in our arrangement. And we're going to take our wire and lay it as evenly as you can across the foam. And turn around to where you can see it, because I'm designing backwards. So you're gonna do it to where it's as even as you can get it across your foam. We know that it needs to be 18 inches wide. So now find 2 carnations, preferably not your most open one, because you want that for the focal point. And we are going to find 2, and we know that our flower heads are gonna have to hit the end of this wire. Well, obviously these stems are way too long, and so I'm actually gonna set down 1. I'm gonna measure 1, and then I'll just cut the other one to match because they should be symmetrical and identical. Okay, so I know that I for sure need to cut to at least this node, or my stem is gonna be coming out the other side. If you can, you always wanna cut right above the node. You don't want to insert them. So here's the tricky part. You're going to have to put 2 of these in here. So if I go ahead and cut this other one, the exact same length as they should be. Okay. What's going to end up happening is this is symmetrical. If I leave these this length and know that I have to push them in this far, what's gonna happen is they're gonna knock stems in the middle. We don't want that, because if they hit stems in the middle, it's gonna create a big gaping hole and these are not gonna stay in place. And so realistically, you're gonna have to take some more off. So I'm gonna take and trim right above this node. And I'm just gonna take some more off to where I can comfortably insert them almost directly across from each other, and they're not gonna knock in the middle. They should just barely miss each other, okay? So now I have about ½ an inch or so between the stems. Back to what I was saying with depth. So we already have created this slight lean back, right? So I'm not straight up and down, I can't shimmy. Well, now essentially you're finishing your triangle. And so imagine this. These are carnations 2 and 3. I could shimmy through a wall, right? If I stayed nice and straight. We don't want that, we're not 2-dimensional. So in order to create depth, you got your first carnation leaning slightly backwards. Now what we're gonna do is give it some ballet arms. Not like circle arms, not like beach ball. But you're gonna bring those carnations 2 and 3 in just a little bit to help create depth. By doing that, I can no longer shimmy through a set of walls, right? Because my arms and my back are all leaning, creating this depth. That's what we're doing here. So these should not be straight out. I can't insert these backwards, sorry guys. These should not be straight out. You are gonna give them a slight tilt in to create that depth. Be very careful with carnations They do naturally have bends and stuff in the stem. And so make sure you have happy flowers, not sad flowers. For instance, I don't want to put this one in this way. I'm going to be looking at the side. I'm going to put it in facing upward to where it's nice and happy and it looks like it's looking at the sun, right? You do not want these resting on the sides of your bowls. You are going to have to get a piece of water leaf under them. So I'm going to place them. These go on the side of the foam. In the middle. And so what you should be able to do is then take and lay your wire from rose head to rose head, okay? So you can see that it's not flat. It does have that very, very slight bend forward, help create the depth. They are inserted on the sides of the foam. Make sure you do that. I tell kids to even avoid creating a gaping hole in the middle. I tell them to offset carnations 2 and 3 just a little bit. So on the sides of the foam, this one's in back here. And what I did was I slightly went forward with this one, ever so slightly on this side. So that way I didn't even risk running into this one. But make sure flower heads are still directly across from each other. You should be able to draw a line down the middle and it should be symmetrical. But if you just offset them just a little bit, it will prevent you from hitting stems in the middle as well. So now we have our triangle started. Well, obviously there's a big gaping hole from here to here. We need to create an implied line. So what we're gonna do is take our wire and lean it right here. Okay. So you can kind of see with my beautiful orange ball, you can see the wire going across here. Our job now is with carnations 4 and 5 is to fill this void. I set my most open one off to the side so I didn't use it. So I'm gonna take these two and use these to fill in this. So I always tell kids you can kind of, for the most part with 4 and 5, you can trim off a big part of that stem. I trimmed off almost half because these are not gonna be super duper tall. This will make it measuring a little easier. So this carnation should hit inside this line. It should not be out here and it should not be down here. It needs to fall directly in line. We are creating an implied line. So your carnation is going to hit about here. Now there's not a gaping hole. I always tell my students, take a little bit more off at a time. You do not want to run the risk of cutting these too short. So you can kind of see what I'm doing from the back side is holding it to see I need it to hit here. That's obviously still a lot of stem left. It would go all the way to the bottom, which we don't want. I'm gonna take a little bit more off. Can't see from that side. Remember, you need about 1 inch or so for inserting. I should be about right. So here I have cut this one. This is symmetrical, so I'm gonna hold this one here. And I am going to cut them the same length. Okay. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna insert them on top of the foam, right directly in front of that seat belt. you do have a slight turnout of an angle. And now that flower head is in line with my piece of wire. Right, so it falls directly in line. Do not set it underneath per se, but it should be connecting the visual dot. You want it right in line with that wire. Now you're gonna take and do what you did on this side to the other side. And honestly, guys, this is a perfect example. I may have cut this one too short, and the reason that happened was because I was trying to avoid my node. That's okay. If you do accidentally cut one too short, don't freak out. You could definitely use it for our last 3 carnations. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take and find one. Obviously I know this is too short, so I'm just gonna give me some extra length. And I'll just take a moment and kind of remeasure what I'm trying to do. Okay, so now I have a triangle. It is symmetrical, so you want things to be, if you were to draw a line down the middle, what you see on this side is what you see on this side. Okay. Next, we're going to insert carnation number 6, which is honestly one of the easiest carnations. It is going to go directly in front of carnation 1, kind of right there between the A and the S on Oasis. As far as the height, this obviously has bit neck syndrome over here. As far as the height, what you're gonna want is, if you were to insert this, I always tell my kids to take a step back, hold up their thumb, and you should have about a thumb's gap from about the calyx on your carnation to where this flower head should hit. And so, remember, don't leave your stem too long. If not, you're gonna hit other stems that are already in the foam. So this is gonna go directly in front of 1. This does start the transition forward, and I don't want you to overthink this, okay? It does start the transition forward to the focal point. So it is meant to be more up and down than 1. But you also need to take into account that it is going to have a very, very slight tilt forward to start the transition. If it's straight up and down, you're gonna have a gaping hole here. This one has bent neck, really weak stem. And so I'm actually not gonna angle mine at all because it's naturally leaning that way. But you do wanna give it a slight, very, very slight tilt forward, so that you're starting the transition from here to here. And honestly, that is, I'm gonna give it just a small push. And so when I take a step back, I realize I'm gonna run into a problem of a node. I need to insert just past this node. Obviously, if I cut above it, it'll be too short. So while I don't recommend this all the time, I do occasionally tell my kids that it's okay to take a floral knife and shave the node down some to where it's about the circumference of the rest of the stem, and then it's not gonna have a gaping hole. Probably not necessarily the right thing to do, but it works, so this is what I do. Because no carnation's ever gonna be perfect. It's just kind of like shaving. You're just gonna take a little bit off, okay? And that way it doesn't create a huge gaping hole in your stem. So, or in your foam, not your stem. So now when I take a step back, I can kind of see, yep, my whole thumb. The gap I'm talking about is the gap from this flower head to about the calyx. Next are carnations 7 and 8, and these are like little bug antennas. So getting the angles on these is very important. These are gonna be placed in front of carnations 4 and 5, but they're gonna be almost on these corners looking outward. This is part of the transition to the focal point, which is here, which is carnation 9. And so you can cut off half of your carnation stems because these are fairly short. Okay, so I cut off half of the stems of my carnation so that I can measure. And you want these, each flower head needs to have its own spotlight or space, as we call it. You do not want this flower head directly in line with this flower head. You want it to where each flower head has its own space and spotlight so that you can see each flower head. So I probably need to take a little bit more off. Okay, I got this one measured out. I'm gonna take and cut this one the same length. These are bug antennas. So think about a bug, right? They come directly out of their forehead like this. They are not way out here and they're not straight forward. You've gotta, they have space, right? Because they're on their corners, right? That sounds super weird, I know, but it makes sense. And so you're gonna put these on the corners. Like bug antennas. So each flower has its own space. Make sure you always take a step back and look at it. I actually need to turn this one in just a smidge. Another thing, besides triangles and angles, another thing that you should see at this point is what's starting our V. So from carnation 4 to carnation 8 to carnation 9 to carnation 7 to carnation 5. It should have a V. Last is our carnation, the most open one. This is one that I personally had to fix. This is fairly short, so go ahead and cut half your stem off. This is coming directly out at you. It is not coming like this way. You are gonna give it a slight tilt upward, because if you're sitting down, this would be the focal point, even if you're standing up. So this is gonna be a fairly short one. Okay, so now you can see your V. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It should all be in line with each other. So I see my V. I always tell my kids before moving on, take your wire, 18 inches, 18 inches. My carnations fall in line with my wire, not sunken in, not way out here. Okay, everything looks good, everything looks secure. That is a complete skeleton for the symmetrical triangle that you will need to complete the TSA exam. The next part of this arrangement is greening down. We will be greening down with 9.5 pieces of leather leaf. you will be using one tip of your leather leaf for your boutonniere. So you'll use like the tip of it, and then obviously you'll have the rest of the stem. Before moving on, I most definitely wanted to review on how to cut greenery, more specifically how to cut leather leaf to where you get the most bang for your buck, if you will. And so you can see that leather leaf grows in kind of like pairs. They're always paired right next to each other. The best way to cut leather leaf is to start at the bottom, and what you're gonna do is what you're gonna cut what I call angel wings, or wings in general. And basically you go 1, 2, so obviously these two are a pair. You're gonna take your shears and you're going to cut right above where it connects to the stem. So now what you do is you have a stem for this set of wings, which is gonna cover a lot of surface area, and wings, right? And from there, what you can do is continue to cut some wings if you need to, okay? So from there, what you would do is, here's the stem. Oh, here's my next grouping. Take your shears, cut right above the grouping. If you don't cut right above the grouping and you try to cut up here, what you've done is taken away the stem that the next set of wings could have. So you're gonna take and cut here, and now this has a stem and wings. I wanna show you though, I'm gonna save this tip, what would happen if you cut in the wrong space. So I'm like, oh, there's my first set of wings, and I cut way up here. Well, now you have this ugly stem sticking out of your wings, and you have left virtually no stem for your next set of wings. And then it's a never-ending cycle. Ugly stem hanging out, no one wants that. It looks funny, it looks like something's supposed to be there and it's not, and then you have like no stem. So you definitely wanna make sure that you're cutting just right above each set of wings. That's really gonna maximize how much you can get out of your leather leaf. So, as far as placing leather leaf in our arrangement, you should have 9 beautiful tips, beautiful most of the time, of leather leaf. And what I mean is the tips way up here. You're gonna use these 9 tips to what's called shadowing our lines. We've created our lines. They're all implied lines, like a game of connect the dots. What we're gonna do is we're gonna use this leather leaf to help kind of reinforce the lines. And so what you're gonna do is put 1 piece of leather leaf either behind or under each of the carnations. I'm gonna go through that now so that you know what I mean. And then before you know it, you'll see it start to take even a more bigger shape, symmetrical shape, as well as start to fill in. So the first one, go in the same order. First carnation. You don't want it sticking above, you don't want it sinking way under. You want it just behind this first carnation. It's still too tall. I always try to find my prettiest piece of leather leaf for my first one because that creates the backing, so it really just kind of sets the tone for how everything else kind of falls into place. This piece of leather leaf is going to go directly behind your first carnation. Yes, it's going to lean back. Yes, it's okay. Remember, it's full of depth. You do not want to put this stem in the same hole as the carnation stem. Each stem needs its own hole, unless if you don't give it its own hole, it's going to create a gaping hole and nothing's going to stay in place. So just right behind it, give it some space. And there you have it. You have your first carnation. First carnation shadowed, but with your leather leaf. Next, I have carnations 2 and 3 out on the sides. And these are gonna go under. Remember, I told you not to let them rest on the bowl for this reason. And you're gonna have to trim them shorter. So just make sure you're using your wings to get them to be shorter. Same rules apply here. You don't want it sticking way over, out past over here. You don't want it sunken in way down here. it should be just kind of even. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna, I'll try to do it this way. Ever so slightly insert this piece of leather leaf under your carnation. What you do to one side, you're gonna do to the other. No shocker there. This is a symmetrical arrangement. So I can only get one set of wings off this one because if I cut another set, it'd be way too short. Oh, it wouldn't. No. I can get one more out of there. And then you're just gonna repeat on this side. And now, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes you get a rando one like this where it only has one. Still give it some stem so you can use it in like a small place on a corner. Don't want to just waste a small piece. I have pre-cut some of my pieces as well, just because, to save some time. So you can see now that shape is really reinforced. Now you really see that triangle starting to form. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't forget about number 6. Goes directly behind, just like everything else. When you get to carnations 7, 8, and 9, your pieces are gonna go underneath, coming out this way. So leather leaf has 1, a natural bend to it. 2, it has a very shiny, pretty side and a back side. This one has little seeds on it, but you can see the side's duller. You don't want the dull side showing. If you were to put it like this, it would change the whole directionality of your design. We want this to be radiating from the center, like blooming out. So these are gonna go up in the front underneath the carnations. Never insert greenery into your foam. This one guy's in my way. All I'm gonna do is peel them off so that I can get where I'm looking for. So you can see how I've inserted that one coming out underneath. It is not too long. You are not supposed to be taking away from the beauty of the carnations. You're just accenting them. And then same thing you did with carnations 2 and 3. For carnation 1, it's gonna go up underneath, coming right out at you. Okay, so you can see how that has started to fill in nicely. Okay, so we got them underneath, behind each carnation. Okay, try to give you a top view. As for the pile of greenery and wings that you should have left, That's gonna be used to go in and fill your holes. Two things. I always suggest that you start at the rim of your container. The most important part is that you cover your mechanics. That includes your tape and your foam. So you wanna cover that. As far as the back side of this design, this is one-sided. This is traditionally a piece of, a floral piece that you would set up against a wall. So people technically shouldn't see the back. However, think about like if it's sitting on a table in an entryway and you're coming down the hallway, you can still see kind of behind here. And we just wanna make sure we cover our foam. So what I tell my students is start there. Find maybe two to three pieces of wings that are pretty large and or not in the best of shape, and use them in the back. And what you'll do is, depending on the wings, which angles you use them at, you can cover tons of surface area. So for example, I generally put one on each corner and then one in the middle. And the main purpose is just to try to hide as much foam as you can. So I tell my kids, get a few pieces in and started to cover, see how it's not like a big gaping foam hole anymore. And then stop, because you do want to make sure you have enough for the front. So I put 3 pieces back there for now. If I have some left over, I may go in and tuck in a piece or 2. From there, what you're gonna do is fill in your holes. And this is symmetrical, so for the most part, I mean, what you do to one side, if you wanted to make this super easy, you need to do to the other. Watch the directionality of your leather leaf. You need to follow the lines you've already created. So what I mean by that is you can see how each piece of leather leaf is radiating. I'm not gonna go and stick a piece in like this. That doesn't follow what I'm doing. I need to try to use my angles to follow and radiate with the leather leaf. These pieces should not be super short, but they should not be long. So, like, I'll be honest with you, this is still probably fairly short, and so there's not a lot you can do with it. I'm gonna save it just in case, but I probably won't end up using it. So what's gonna happen is if you put too many short pieces in, it's gonna look like a crater hit your arrangement, and you don't want that. That's like a super holy arrangement that is not going to be very aesthetically pleasing. So I'm going to green down, cover my mechanics first, always. And your wings are, some of them are probably fairly large, so covering your tape and your mechanics should be pretty easy. Greening down is definitely the part that I think frustrates most, and that's okay. Practice makes perfect in a sense. Although even after doing this for many, many years, I'm always open to things being better and my skills getting better. If you have super large pieces of wings and you're like, man, those are way too big for my arrangement, 9 times out of 10, you can pull them off and create little mini pieces of like leather leaf. And so that's always an option as well. They do not judge on the quality of material, so if your leather leaf is looking rough, as long as it's placed correctly and the directionality is what they're looking for, then you really shouldn't have any issues. So you can see how things are starting to fill in nicely. They're radiating from the center. Everything is following the correct directionality. I have a few small pieces I'm gonna tuck in the back just because I have them left over. Make sure you get down eye level too and look around the bowl. You shouldn't be seeing a whole lot of foam at this point. Any pieces you may have left over, you just kind of tuck around in the back. I'm going to stop here because mine's getting pretty full and we still have status to insert. So I'm going to stop and that will complete my greening down process. I am going to save what few pieces of leather leaf I have left until after I get my status inserted. That way if I still have any big holes that I need to cover, I may still have a piece or two. All right, last but not least, and probably the easiest part of this arrangement is going to be the status, which is our filler. You are essentially, with your filler, going to what I call shoot the gaps. And so you can see there's tons of greenery and then there's color. Well, now what you're going to do is take your status and you're going to shoot the gaps to give it more color in the green spots and also fill your holes, hence filler. So they give you, they say a third of a bunch, normally 2 to 3 stems, pretty branchy. And the first thing I want to say is always find a piece that you can use that's tall, because we're going to need a piece that's going to go right here. And so you're going to want to find a tall piece, and you also need to be careful not to overdo the greenery. If you've never cut status, you're going to use kind of like the leather leaf, cut off the main stem and keep the extras. So now I have a piece of tall stem that's going to go between carnations 1 and 6. It should be almost the same height as carnation number 6, you guys. Should not be So there we have the first piece. Okay. And then basically you're gonna shoot the gaps from there. So it should be identical on each side. If you were to draw a line right down the middle, what's over here should be here, what's here should be here, what's here should be here, and then the middle. So you're gonna have the purple V inside of your carnation V. Status also has a slight arc to it, I guess. Make sure you're using that with the correct directionality of your arrangement. They also have a really funny stem. You can most definitely pull off some of this. Makes them a little bit easier to insert. So you're following, right, the same order of carnations kind of that you've already done. I'm not gonna lie guys, honestly, this is one of the hardest parts for me, just because, I don't know, I always forget where to place them. So that's why I tell myself, shoot the gaps. Where are my gaps? Basically between each carnation is my gap. What you do to one side, do to the other. That's what I tell myself. I've been doing this a while and you know, it still trips me up and that's okay. Just do your best and it will work out. Okay, so you can see on my first triangle there. Sometimes the hardest part is finding a place to insert it. Obviously, you've greened down already. So you can see that my purple V is starting to form. Fair warning, the stems on these are also kind of sort of fragile, so you gotta be careful. They will break on you like mine did. So I have my purple V, and now really what I'm missing is right here on these corners. Obviously there's lacking purple. Do not overdo it with the purple. It's just there to break up the green and fill some holes. And there you have it. You have one in each gap. I did want to say I had to adjust these two just a smidge. So I'm gonna have to go in and check, see how they're still in line with everything. I can still see my V's. Everything is where it's supposed to be. Each flower has its own space. And there you have it, a symmetrical arrangement.